Good morning. It's Sunday, the 16th of February 2025. I always have to be careful to get the 25 right because it's unbelievable to make a good video. I discover you have the wrong date. Gold and silver, where is it? And all of that. Now, the reason I mention this is not that I want all you to be big investors, and some of you maybe just getting along good enough on whatever you have, whatever it may be, and you're happy enough. And maybe that's the best way to live in this world. But whether you like it or not, it has an effect on your government, it's your government economics, and all of that. How your government performs and how the EU, of which we are members of, performs, and other countries, and Britain as well. Now, I just want to give you a few words. You may be hearing it on the media, and you'll not know what they're talking about a lot. And my job is more to inform you rather than to give you any advice. I'm not your financial advisor, and I'm not giving this as financial advice. It's for interest and for political reasons more than investment advice. So I can't be held accountable for that. But the thing is, there's a few words. One word is arbitrage. Arbitrage, Arbit or It's not a word you ever would use in normal talking. And I saw it happening a lot because what arbitrage is, it's buying and selling at the same time or simultaneously because there's a minor change in the price in different outlets. An example of that used to be long ago in the cattle marts. I remember a young lad thought he was going to make his fortune, and he used to go into one mart and he'd buy cattle in it. And he'd drive them by foot to another town 8 miles away, and he'd get help from other lads, and he'd put them on sale in the new town. And of course, there were a day hanging around the marts, and he probably very soon discovered that the amount he got in one mart was not much different from the other. There wasn't really money to be made in that way. One of the things I buy a lot of cattle and have bought a lot of cattle. Excuse me. I used to often buy maybe a few, and I'd see one in it I didn't like that well, or I'd buy one, just he'd be struck down to me, and I would have bid on him, and I got him, and maybe I mightn't think he was a good investment, and I'd bring him out the following week or 2 weeks, and I'd never get the price I paid. I'd always get the price below what I was bidding. So if the animal was making €530 and I bid 540 and got him, when I'd bring him out, the best I'd do is 530 and maybe only 520. So that type of buying and selling without any add input to it or any addition is arbitrage in financial circles. I'm not saying you use it or I should use it, but there's no point using it if no one knows what it means. Arbitrage. Now, the other one is FTF. The other one is ETFs, exchange traded funds, and this is the market that's between that goes on to do with shares. Can be exchange traded funds. So can derivatives. So can gold certificates, silver certificates, aluminium certificates, that sort of stuff. ETF, you might see it coming up, you not know what it is. It's simply exchange traded funds, and it means sweet damn all, really. I wouldn't worry about it, but just to have an idea what it is. Now, the reason I bring up this is I have noticed something funny in the financial markets. I have a business degree course now. I have 22 years in the Institute of Public Administration in Dublin, and a lot of it was dealt with finance, and there were good professors up there, really good professors. And the morning that one of them, he was only temporary in from retirement because the other man was sick, mentioned about the contracts for differences, I was half asleep from a rough night the night before, and I asked him to repeat it, and he says, "Oh, I'm amazed somebody spotted this. I mean, contract for difference." I said, "That's going to destroy a lot of people, I know." He says, "It will. It shouldn't be allowed." He says, "It's not allowed in America." And that's what brought down Sean Quinn, exchange contracts for differences, essentially. Anyway, we'll not go there. I'm only saying that. Now, the thing is that there is a lot of unsettlement in the financial markets. There's a lot of talk, there's a lot of YouTube videos and all of this. and a lot of very good experts talking about it. Now, the first thing we must understand about our finances is we live in the biggest debt bubble ever known to human beings. You look on a British pound sterling, even yet, I would say, and you'll see a picture of the king or the queen, and he'll say, I promise to pay the bearer on demand £10. In other words, he's guaranteeing you go in with that, you'll get £10. And because the king puts his name to it, it helps his status too. So a banknote is nothing more than a promise to pay. And so it's credit. Now, up until 1932, a gold sovereign was worth £1 sterling. And you'll often heard the old people saying about a pound, how hard it would be to get a pound, how much you'd have to work to get a pound. And don't forget, there was hired boys that them. I know from them telling me that the half-yearly pay for a hired person with his food, not his clothing, was £6 a half year, £12 a year. So his year's work, you might get a Sunday off. You get a bit of time off. Usually the farmer would milk the cows on a Sunday evening. The fella that was hired here used to go to the gamble, pitch and toss every Sunday. It was good for him. He was all the better for it. You know, he might have lost money, but it was healthy for him. But anyway, the thing about it is that he'd work for 12 sovereigns for a year's work, £12. Now, in 1932, then that was broken and it wasn't linked to the pound. So what's happened now is a gold sovereign now is £590 sterling. It's 590 times more valuable than it was in 1932. They couldn't hold the value down because they print money. Now, so one of the things about any coin with a value on it, it's royal mint, and in English common law areas it can't be taxed. You can't tax a €100 note itself. You can't tax the note itself, or a euro coin or a €2 coin. And that law pertains in America as well, because they're British common law. The British tramped around there as well. So that's just a little thing to know. Now, what's happening at the minute is there's talk about gold and silver, and mainly gold. Now, I explained to you that gold is often leased out. And there's a meeting of people, I might post it underneath, I can't think of it now. There's a meeting of big bankers which takes place every year. And there's a rule in it, I'll post it underneath, that you don't talk outside there. And you never bring out what's said, it's kept within the walls. A funny name on it, I just can't think of it in a minute. It's about a week ago I saw it, but it's there and I'll post underneath. But it was said that one thing came out of there, that someone said the gold that's on the books of the world and that the IOUs and the paper and the certificates, half of it is on the necks of Asian women. In other words, Asian men fall in love for some lassie and they buy her a gold necklace, and they borrow gold, or the jeweler borrows gold, paying a small fee for it, and produces the jewellery, and the lad that he gives it to the woman to break off, and then he won't pay back. There's a bit of that. You understand what I'm kind of get? That may not all be recoverable, what's out there. There's also talk that if you visited the banks, the vaults of America and England, particularly America, you would find a big load of IOUs, like paper, not so much gold, a few bars there to make it look good. The Germans demanded to see their gold in the American exchange. I don't know, was it Fort Knox or New York? And the Americans said, under no circumstances. Now, of course, the gold could be there in big trays and pallets. And how would you know who owned what? So it mightn't be that easy to do that. They don't engrave the owner on it. But the Americans wouldn't let the Germans see it, and the Germans withdrew a good bit of their gold. Another thing that has happened, I don't know what's going on long ago, but certainly going on now, was that using money as a weapon. In the time of Michael Collins in the Irish Revolution, in Irish independence struggle, he issued bonds in his own name. He signed them on behalf of the Irish government. Michael Collins. Now, if that were now, the British government would probably block the transfer of the money to the Irish government. but not that time. Now, America has seized the assets of Venezuela and Russia that I know of, and probably plenty more. So the money in America only all right provided they like you. You put money in America, they'll steal it. They stole Russians and they stole South American, Venezuelan money, and I'd say plenty more. Right? We don't have to go there. So that shakes the idea of investing in government treasuries in America, and also in the EU and in Britain, when they take the money off you because they don't like you. So that's just an idea of the weakness of the traditional credit. You put your money into the T-bills or treasury bills in America, €1 billion, or we'd say €500 million, and Ireland has almost €500 million in there, and you're depending on them to give it back to you. And they're stone broke, and the only way they can get it is to borrow somebody else. So all of this is funny. It's funny. What's going on there is funny. The one thing for certain, this idea that the lefties will tell you that gold is no use, that it's useless, is just left-wing baloney. It has the same value provided it's available now as it ever had. There is a good system of marking it and stamping it and all of that too. But the thing is, I just want to let everyone know that this is a big topic. Now, I suspect that because there's no doubt all the experts say we're in the biggest credit bubble ever. Why are we in a credit bubble? Because money and value is valued without any real reason. So I go back to my old bugbear, the windmills. After 20 years, who wants them? It costs you millions to pull them down. And yet at 19 years, they're valued at millions, when in fact they're valued nothing. But there's a buzz out there from fellas and women and everything. Oh, we're green, and there's a big buzz out there. So they'll do anything not to let the thing collapse. And the classic example of that was John Lang plc with the Glen Carbery wind farm, and then Greencoat buys it. Now there's talk about Greencoat being sold again. So what has been happening in that industry, and I only bring it up, folks, not to criticise it now, but to point out it's the area I studied. In that industry, there's a concerted government-backed approach to never let reality creep in, never let the truth of financial accounts fit in. And the way they do that is they overvalue the assets. They overvalue it. They also load the cost on the consumer, which they have no option, only pay in their electricity bills. And they put carbon taxes and everything else. And even like that, they're still broke. So that's an example. Now, if they do that with the renewable energy, what's to stop some lad come along and say, I'm after thinking up a great idea. Oh, we'll use hydrogen. We're going to do hydrogen and borrow 3 billion off the banks of money investors have in there. Could be some of yours for all you know. And I have a bank account for the checking anyway, and I could be getting a big lump of that when I buy and pay for meal and cattle and everything else. So they can get into that. So how do we know that the banks are not saying, or some lender are not saying, oh, hydrogen, that's the future. Oh, that's the future. Oh, we'll give them 1 billion. That's how do we know that? That's what's happening. That's what's happening. And definitely in Britain and in Europe, anyone that has a green stamp gets every concession. And yet all of this is a scam. You note that when President Trump started out to pull out of all this green stuff, nobody ever says, hold on a minute, you're destroying the environment. Well, nobody came along and said, President Trump, or made a video, you are destroying your children's future by stopping this. Nobody. They must all know it was a scam from the start. So go back then to buildings and property. I'd say if you bought a good building in a good area in 1932 and sold it now, you'd get roughly the same multiple of inflation as you would if you had bought a gold sovereign. A gold sovereign. Gold sovereign contains a portion of gold. It's not a full ounce. Well, you can work it out yourself. Gold is now about 2.8 and it's 690. So, it's about a third. Anyway, it's there. You'll find it there. It's no big problem. So there isn't that big a difference. Inflation applies to property and it applies to gold and silver, but there's not as big a mining on gold and silver. But one of the things that people find when they want to buy a bit of gold, they might say, I'm going to buy a little gold piece or something. They'll be told you can insure it, Well, what's that insurance? It's against theft or destruction. But how do we know the gold isn't all into a big thing and leased out and let out and recycled? Will it be the last one holding the piece of paper? It'll be left with nothing. That could be a problem. So the big question a lot of the experts ask is the gold there at all? Is the gold that is issued and that there are certificates issued for and other things issued for, is it there? We know the Chinese, the Indians and the Russians have a lot of gold stored. They see it as a backup for their currency and they're toying with using it as a backup for the BRICS currency. And the key to doing that is, can you exchange your money for gold? Can you go in with your Chinese yuan or whatever it is and the nimby, and I have two names on it, and ask for that amount of gold? And that's what they're trying to see. Could that work? Because if everyone that had the money went in looking for the gold, you could have a problem. Usually it'd be 40% backed, which would mean that you'd only get 40% back. Now in 1933, is it FDR, the US president anyway, Franklin D. Roosevelt, I think it is, in 1933 anyway, the president of America, he issued an order that all gold had to be handed up. And in exchange, you got dollars. The date he did that, a dollar was worth 1 ounce of gold. I think that was it. Now, it mightn't be exactly on that ratio, but there was a fixed exchange rate between dollar and gold. So when they ordered you to take up give in your gold, if you did, you got a certificate to say you're entitled to so many dollars. You could get the dollars, which they printed, or you could get a certificate to say you're entitled to those dollars, a balance in the bank. Only a small proportion of people actually handed it up. But the point is, you could get pound for pound or dollar for dollar. You see. So that's why it's unlikely that that'll happen again. It wasn't as controversial because when you got your dollars, there was a few years that it still hold a good deal of value, and you could go back as soon as the ban was over and buy gold again. You might have lost a bit, but you could buy gold again. The problem nowadays, if you had to hand up your gold, if you had it, if you had to hand up your gold, supposing people had it themselves, and you handed it up, you'd get a note for euros, and those euros are rapidly depreciating due to inflation. I hope I've made that kind of clear. Now, when I bought my first car, a gallon, an imperial gallon of petrol was 25 cents. And that was 32 euro cent. 32 euro cent. So 32. I'm after working out there based on the 4.5 conversion. It's now 7.68. So 32 cent to 7.68 since the 1970s. So this is a sign of the delinquency of our society. And I think that you have to build into account in our modern Western democracies, responsibility is almost gone. What Kamala Harris was marketing in her campaign was a total lack of responsibility to control migration, to protect against inflation, go along with every old scam, green or any other colour there was, to do mad things and to use money to pay for it, the money being printed. The rest of it being earned by fuel, and then they try to use the money earned by fuel to stop consuming fuel. A lot of the reason why a lot of the things I talk about here and complain about in the EU and everywhere else is down to the lack of the courage to take action and the lack of the voters to back the governments that take the action. So if we look at Ireland in the last election, it elected, people say, it was 6% and 60%. The people who voted elected Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Sinn Féin. And the UK, they elected Starmer. No matter how many votes he has, that's the system. A lot of people didn't come out, so they don't care. And if those who didn't vote in Ireland came out, they'd have voted Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael and Sinn Féin. That's the reality. So the governments are backed up by this. They may know this is not a good idea, but they can't change it. And then there are those saying it's our society collapsing. I don't know. But definitely the way our society is being run is strange. It's weird. It's the easy way out for the government. Printing money is the easy way out for finance, not to keep any controls on it. And the old gold and silver is the thing that they can't dig up fast enough. It can't be pulled out of the ground at the rate they'd like. And so I would say the rascality that's going on with the wind farms, the derivative trade, which is part of this. When that man in Dublin talked about the derivative trade, I also questioned him on it. And he said it was a bit mad as well. You can sell derivatives to this one and that one and arbitrage them and get them across. And there's people who does nothing else, only figure out these pieces of paper and contracts and all this stuff. And what exactly is there at the back of it all? A whole heap of figures done out on computers probably and everything else. The thing about the gold, it's a substance that's either there or it's not. It's a hard asset, it's money. And so is silver. So, to get back to the point before I go, there's no way any Western society that has responsible politics can survive the voter. But there are exceptions. I think I made a mistake in one of the last videos in saying they had overthrown the president of Hungary. No, I meant Romania. So we see that even the reality of the ballot box has been overthrown throughout Europe. That's what J.D. Vance's speech was about. The will of the people is being circumvented some way because there's not enough will on the voters' behalf to put them out and change the government. And then over in America, because they have a slightly different way of thinking, and because ultimately they're the ones who are expected to lay down their lives. I mean, American soldiers in 1945, some of them came from states out west, down south. They never heard of Normandy beaches or Omaha Beach, or didn't even know between the difference between south of England and the north of France. They didn't know a damn hit. Some of them were just farm boys, knew about feeding horses and hay and hunting for rabbits and that, and they found themselves getting off a boat facing German machine guns. The British did it too, and Australians too. But by and large, the Americans were involved in a war that had nothing to do with them, and that had been started by silly decisions made a way back earlier. That's the point I'm making. And so now they're saying, hold on a minute, you won't pay for it. You won't even pay for the security we're giving you. You want us to spill our blood. And that reality, it's the reality of the presence of the American conservative voter that has pulled the world along. It used to be the British conservative voter and the Irish Fine Gael party. Used to be. And Billy Brandt and these people. But not anymore. As we move forward and as progressiveness and climate hysteria gets a grip, that changed. And the EU thought they were going to live and suck on the hind tit of the United States, and that was working perfectly under Kamala and under Biden, and the next thing along come Donald Trump. And we have the Vance speech. And this has created unbelievable uncertainty in the markets. Now, some say the reason that the gold price has gone up is the fear of tariffs, that Trump will put tariffs on gold coming back into the United States, which a lot of it is, or that the EU in turn will put tariffs on gold coming back out. It seems improbable, to tell you the truth. Seems improbable. It's more than likely, when you look at American aid and the fiddling that was going on there, it's more than likely there's a huge fiddle in the biggest credit bubble ever. The value of the assets on company and banking balance sheets are about half of what they should be. And it's only a matter of time till they try to sell them and they can't get a buyer. And when that happens, the person that bought them will stop paying the money back. And when they stop paying the money back, you have a banking crisis. Do you get my point? That's probably what happened. That's what happened in 2008. And the best information is that's what's happening again. Credit system works to a degree. It can be extended out and made a bit elastic, but it has its limits. And now there's no regard for any kind of a cover-up. So if the European Union or the British go over to Trump and say, we want you to cover up this here now and tell lies about it, he say, how will not? I don't know such thing. And I think that's what's putting the jitters on them. The price of gold is going up, not because it's worth. That never happened. In old Irish manuscripts that were brought to me by a student of old Ireland, it said that a good cow was worth an ounce of gold. The ounce of gold at that time was slightly lighter than the ounce today. It was more or less the same, but it had maybe more impurities in it, so it might be a little less valuable. But anyway, when I sell cows, I get the very same. A good cow today makes an ounce of gold, the same as she did 2,500 years ago. Gold is simply an asset and a currency. It's not, as someone says here, for investment purposes or all that. But when you consider what everything else is, I mean, it's a way ahead. Just consider, if you buy US or British or Irish bonds or Euro bonds, you keep them for 10 years. No matter what interest you got, you could never get back in real money, in real purchasing power, what you paid for them. You're on a loser all of the time. So watch out for these things. The word arbitrage, you now know what it means. It means buying and selling at the same time in order to exploit minor differences in the price in different purchasers and traders. You understand arbitrage? ETFs are exchange traded funds, and this goes on. It's a huge, big industry, and the potential for fraud is big. May I just say too, remember this word courage. I couldn't understand when I reported wind farm accounts that were obviously contravention of the law. The financial regulator in Ireland refused to intervene. The financial regulators are afraid of the lives of the big boys in the financial markets. It would take courage to go in and do it. They'd stand up to you in the hall and wouldn't let you in. But they're not prepared to do it. And so the fiddling goes on all the time. There's no government regulation because it would take a good big pair of you-know-what to actually do it. And you could get a bag in the eye. This is what's the difference now, what's happening in America. That Elon Musk, I heard it on good authority last night, that he went down to that US aid, and he went down in the night time when everywhere was closed. He had a team of young people specially trained how to deal with it. They had some of the codes or whatever they did. They sat down the whole night and they downloaded all the rascality was going on. When they came in the morning at 9 o'clock to open the place, they discovered the place was teeming with Musk's people. They raised a racket, they started calling the police, but he had a presidential document. They could then get and fiddle all they liked. Musk had got the whole material. That takes unbelievable courage. God save the man. Unbelievable wisdom and courage, and only a person who has intelligence and courage could do it. As an old hunting friend of mine said in this world, he said to me, the two things that count is brains, intelligence, and courage. One without the other is no good. And here you have the entire Western world stood on its ear by that simple act, by pointing out the obvious and doing it and showing them up. And now the price of gold is going up. Some say it'll go to 5,000 an ounce. I still don't go into it big time because I've other things to spend on just as good, and other needy things, and after the storm on the roof of the house and things like that. So that's it. But just it affects us all to some degree. You can see plainly, folks, that the value of the euro in your pocket is going down at an awful rate. I mean, that's one example about the petrol. Look at a loaf of bread. Look at a loaf of bread. A pound of butter used to be about 30 pence in old money. That would be about 40 cents way back in the 70s. An army soldier, I was in the FCA, people slagged me for it. I was offered to the Irish Reserve Army, but we got the same pay as the regular soldiers, and I wasn't there too long. But the thing is, we were getting £6, 5 and 2 pence, £6 Irish money. Well, I think it was the same as sterling that time. So you're talking about 7.50 €7.50 for a week as a soldier. The reason I use that is that shows you it's something to compare against. You know what I mean? So a recruit guard in the early 70s got £23, which would be about 28 nowadays a week, all in a week. A hired boy got £6 a half year, or £12 a year, when that was linked to gold. Now the governments can just print money, and these derivative markets, which are very strange things, can do what they like. And when I went to check the windmills, I said they'll be soon gone burst. And the next thing I discovered, they're bought over by some other crowd. And there is some kind of a secret international banking thing that they can go when they're about to collapse, go to this dealer and get relieved of the whole thing with a nice little profit, and they can get out of the trade altogether, and they can go on and build another wind farm and do it again. But the signs are ominous, because if you look at Greencoat Renewable Energy, it was trading last Friday, and I didn't look at it last Thursday, it says the same, 80 cent. So people who bought that share maybe 3-4 years ago at €1, at 10, at 100 cent, only get 80. And so if you take inflation out of it, it's really only 70 at best. So it's not paying them. Okay, folks, have I made that clear about this thing, about what's going on? I don't buy the daily papers much. I don't buy the Sun, any of the papers. I must buy the Financial Times again once or twice, because it can be a paper of record. I don't have time to read them because there are many other things to read. But that's the basis of it, and that's what you're learning, that this is very, very interesting times. What's going on? What's going on? The credit bubble is massive, massive, massive. The United States' money credit bubble is massive. And the thing is, I don't think it's that bad in Russia, and I don't think it's that bad in China. I think they don't run up such huge debts. The EU, well, they are in an unbelievable state. They don't know where to turn. Everything that they stand for has been stood on its head, and they're being told, as I would just do, you're a crowd of blooming idiots. They're building hydrogen storage plants. One of them went on fire in California. Massive explosion. I was in a lift the other day down the Midlands, and there's a big sign, no electric scooters, because they're burning the whole place out. That's it, folks. We'll see you back. Comment underneath, and let's hear what you have to say, and make sure your comments are checked, that they're making logic, and we might learn something from them. Good luck. Thank you very much. Bye.